These can be life and death situations for these young people.
Lee is a victim 1 minute, he is a culprit another.
There is 100 Lees that we're seeing on a regular basis.
We want him to understand what he's done and that there are consequences of what he's done.
Just because you bring the police in doesn't mean to say that we're going to jump in with our size 12s on and go and spoil everything that you're trying to do.
I don't think this incident's about Lee. This incident is about that gang culture yet again invading the school.
What is the best way of corralling a school-based gang and curtailing inter-gang warfare? The expert panel round this table have all had personal experience of tackling gangs. They can't talk openly about actual incidents, so they've agreed to discuss an imaginary story. The moderator is Mike Baker.
Well, hello everyone and welcome. Let me just paint a little picture for you if I can. We're at Lowood School. It's a school that was formed out of the merger of two other schools, serving two rival housing estates, and it is now in special measures and a new management team has been brought in. Now, Rosemary Campbell-Stevens, you are a consultant. You've been brought in as a deputy head to try and help the new management get along. Now, fairly early on in your time at school, you find yourself on a remote corridor in the school which you hadn't actually been to before. And you see coming towards you a very large group of Year 11s, and they are steaming down the corridor. Further down the corridor you can see a small Year 7. His name is Lee. You've got to decide in an instant what you're going to do. Are you going to step in between and try and stop that group, or are you going to stand aside and hope that they go around Lee?
I think I'd be inclined to step in, if I'm being absolutely honest. Group of Year 11 lads moving towards a Year 7, quite vulnerable. I think I'd step in that situation.
Okay, well that's what you've done. You've stepped in. It's a bit of a confrontation for the leader of that group. He's in front of his mates. He thinks he can't back down. He shoves you out of the way. You fall over, you tear your jacket. You're quite badly bruised, I'm afraid. They carry on steaming down the corridor. What are you going to do about it?
Well, clearly in this sort of situation, a school in special measures, it's very important really to have an air of calm. So although I've been approached in that way and I've been knocked down and probably quite embarrassed about what's happened to me in the corridor, it's more important that we follow the procedures in terms of dealing with the youngster rather than me getting into a flap there and then.
The procedures mean informing your head teacher?
It certainly would do.
Okay. Well, Richard Ewan, you are the head teacher. You've been brought in to try and turn this school around. What, briefly, do you want to know from Rosemary about what happened?
A description of the incident, names of any pupils involved, and how, most importantly, how badly is she shaken, hurt, and then let's talk about what I'm going to do.
Okay. Philippa here, you are a superhead who's been drafted in to help Richard to help turn around this school. One of the things you've learnt about this corridor at the far end of the school is that up until now the staff have regarded it as a bit of a no-go area. Are you going to change that?
Well, of course. We will need to get that corridor patrolled. Now, there's a number of things we could think about doing. If we can't get teachers to do it reliably enough, we could bring in security people. All sorts of things we could do. We have to take control of the school, because until you do that, you'll never have safe behaviour, nor will you have learning.
Okay. Now, the problem is, at the moment, it is Rosemary's word against this group of Year 11s. And there is, of course, another potential witness there, and that's Year 7 Lee. But you're going to be putting him at enormous risk. He lives in the same housing estate as that group of lads. If he's seen to be a grass, if he's seen to be telling on them and siding with the teacher, he's going to be in trouble, isn't he? Where's your responsibility lie? Finding the truth or protecting Lee?
Well, my responsibility is to ask him what he saw and to try and...
Just by asking him
Hang on.
and getting answers, you are bringing him into it,
No,
aren't you?
well, I want to ask him to answer my questions honestly. If he's willing and able to do that, then that is evidence, which we would... And I would be quite honest with him and his parents that that evidence, if it were used in pursuing a case against the assailant, could put him at some risk.
Okay, I'm Lee. I'm too scared to tell you anything.
Well, if you won't say anything, there's nothing I can do about it other than see you with your family and try and persuade you that until people start saying things, the risks will go on and they will magnify.
Okay.
Now, I'd want to be working with all sorts of other people. I'd want to be working with the residents' associations on the housing estates. I'd want to be talking to the youth service about whether they can supply youth workers into the school at lunchtime, on the buses,
Okay, well,
etc.
before we get any wider into the community, let's bring in Mel Lest-Evans. You are a social worker. There clearly is this balance between Lee doing his civic duty, as Philip sort of very eloquently put it, but also there's the concern about protecting Lee. He's got a younger brother, a single parent family, and actually in reality you can't be there all the time to look out for him, can you?
No, but Lee's safety has to become a priority over absolutely everything. Obviously there is the issues that are going on at the school which are very important and that needs to be dealt with, but from my point of view Lee has to be ring-fenced more or less and looking at what are the issues for him going on, maybe from his family, the environment that he's living in, how he conducts himself in school and how he's seen by others in school
But
as
his
well.
welfare is the priority.
Absolutely.
And that comes before, does it, coming forward as a witness to give evidence to help Rosemary out of the problem that she's in?
In my role then my priority is always Lee.
Okay.
Is always Lee.
Colin Morehouse, you're a Safer Schools police officer based at the school, or at least some of the week. Would you want to see Lee giving evidence? After all, he is at the moment the only other witness that we know about.
Ultimately, I just want the truth from Lee. I just need to know what Lee knows. We need to speak to, obviously, his family. We'll put them on notice that we're not necessarily seeking a prosecution, we're seeking to establish facts.
Philip, you made it clear that you need to set some standards, you need to get a control of this school. Now, one of the issues that's come to the fore is dress. That gang of youngsters who were racing down the corridor, you know, they had the trousers, you know, halfway down to their knees, those baggy trousers, which showing their underpants. Are you going to take this on? Are you going to make them hitch their trousers up, in other words?
Absolutely, because if we let them wear their gang style in school, we are saying the adults think that's an acceptable way of behaving. This is about grown-ups taking charge of society.
Okay, so we've tightened up on the baggy trousers and they find new ways of challenging the dress code. And actually what you start to notice is that the boys particularly have started coming in, one group sort of wearing red bandanas, there's another group wearing green bandanas. Richard, why shouldn't I wear my bandana? You let those Muslim girls wear their headscarves.
It's a religious symbol. That's a different matter.
Well, this for me is a matter of identity. It's my group.
No, I'm sorry. It's not permitted in school. I would make sure that the governing body were aware of this and that parents were supportive as well. I'm not doing green bandanas because I don't like green. I'm doing it because it's a statement of a gang culture which is not acceptable in the school, and while I'm head, then children are going to do as the adults say.
Julie, as you're the union rep, now the problem with this is, you know, in the end, it's all very well for them to set the rules. Who's actually going to get the brunt of it? The teacher, aren't they? You're going to bring a class in, you're going to spend the first 10 minutes of your class, you know, take that bandana off, put those trousers up. They want you to go and say to Philip that they're not going to do it, that they think it's too far, it's causing friction.
Well, the members have met. They're unhappy about the lack of support that they think they'll be getting from the senior management team. It's an awful lot of work. Calling registers and so on and making children get themselves into uniform is slowing everything down. It adds to the bureaucratic burden because they're constantly writing referrals and they're not getting the support that they need.
Okay. Well, I've got both heads keen to get in, but let's go to Philip. So you've got a bit of a revolt on your hands. I mean, they're hard-working teachers. Yeah, they're a good bunch.
Julie, I'm jolly pleased to see you again. Such a long time since we've had this joust. You've only got half the story, of course, because actually the policy we've determined is that the leadership team will be at the front door. No student will get in the building without the uniform. All the bandanas will be taken away at the
This leadership
front
team's
door.
going to be very stretched, aren't they?
No, it's quite possible.
Patrolling corridors
Well,
and the front door.
But
It's part of being the leadership team.
This is
setting an example, being there, supporting members of staff, and showing that you're actually going to do as you say. And if children don't like it or the parents don't like it, we will discuss it with them and we'll make clear the point. But I'm supporting the staff.
It's going to come to the governors now because there is a clash here. Are you going to go with the staff or are you going to go with the management? If you go with the management, you might see some of your staff walking out the door and you can't afford to lose them. What are you going to do?
No, of course we can't afford to lose them. The school can't afford to lose them.
So you've got to back one side or the other.
The governing body, or I as a governor, would be worried in the first instance if there was a clash between senior management team and the bulk of the staff on any issue.
Yes.
So that would be our first concern. Well, we would back what was brought to the table and discussed on behalf of all members of staff. I mean, it's everyone's interest to address a particular issue, a thorny issue, with a logical debate.
Okay. The next stage, Philip, is you're very aware that a certain number of weapons have got into the school. So that's the next thing that you're going to target. And you're going to institute a weapons search at the entrance to the school, something you've said you're keen on. Once again, you've got a bit of a problem. You're pushing your staff even further. They're all in favour of the weapons search, but they won't do it. And you don't have security officers, and there aren't enough policemen to do it for you either. And not enough senior management either, because they can't do it.
I want to empower all the staff to take control of the relevant bits of the school, and that means sharing the responsibility for corridors and things. I would not ask most staff to undertake any kind of searches, let alone weapon searches. I think a budget priority in the scenario you're painting is for the school to employ security, and I would get the senior management...
So which teachers are you going to sack to find the money for that?
Well, actually, it's quite possible for schools to run a deficit budget, and if necessary...
If your governors are happy.
Well, if necessary, I would set a deficit budget in this case if the priority was justified, and I would discuss that with the local authority. This school is a priority, this estate's a priority, and I would use all my political networks to get the resources into this school to address those problems.
I want to just go across to Graham, because we are getting to a point, aren't we, where the teachers are being asked to do more and more. Aren't we pushing them too hard? Their focus should be on teaching, on standards.
You want teachers to be teaching, but there are lots more staff working with and in schools than there ever were before. And there's another dimension of this, Mike. We haven't actually talked about engaging the young people's voice in all of this as well. And through education processes, through school councils and all the participation and citizenship work, you will get the vast majority of young people on the side of A, uniform, and B, a safe school. And actually in that route, you can also engage lots of volunteers to support you.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Rosemary, one idea that you've picked up in your time as an education consultant moving around different schools is an approach that's been tried elsewhere and seemed to work, which was that you take some of those gang members, I don't mean the most hardened ones, but some of those who were wearing the bandanas, who've taken them off and all the rest of it, and you make them prefects. Now, the advantage of it, first of all, is the other kids are not going to diss them, that's for sure, because they know their network. But the second thing is actually, perhaps, by putting a bit of trust in them, giving a bit of self-esteem, you might actually help reform them as well as bringing some order to the school. So are you going to go for that?
Well, it's already been raised, the whole issue of identity and how important it is. And in approaching it in that way, all you're doing is redefining their identity. And that does bring them back into the school fold in terms of the younger children, actually seeing kids that they know are not the goody-goodies. They're not the ones who are normally going to toe the line, and seeing them buying into what the school stands for.
As prefects in that position.
Absolutely.
Richard, you've gone along with this, you're going to give it a go as well. It seems to be working okay so far. I'm a parent though, and I've come in to see you, and I'm pretty steamed up actually, because my son, he's a well-behaved boy, he's in the school orchestra, he plays the violin. Okay, he's not very big, he wouldn't be able to stop anybody very much, but he's always behaved himself, he's part of the clubs and the school teams, and he's not a prefect. And he comes to me and says, Dad, what's the point? These lads, they muck about, they're naughty, and they've been made prefects. They have it on their CV. I haven't. That's not fair, is it?
It's not fair.
So you're going to change it. Good.
Yep.
I'm glad you agree it's not fair.
Yep.
So you're going to get rid of those lads as prefects.
I'm not going to make on-the-spot judgments and decisions like that. But it patently isn't fair that the school is not supporting good behaviour, good attendance. We are looking at the situation of giving pupils more responsibility.
Sadiq, as a governor, are you happy? Do you think that's right, that actually some of these past troublemakers, they should be made prefects ahead of others who've never stepped out of line?
Yes, of course, it's not always fair. Life's not fair. But as long as a number of pupils were given the opportunity from a wide variety of experiences and backgrounds, and they were doing an effective job as a prefect, that's the key thing.
Colin, that's a funny way. I mean, these sort of things probably happens in prisons, doesn't it? The toughest ones get to control things. Maybe prison officers, sometimes it helps them. But what do you think about this?
I don't know. I think we've also got to steer away from of just responding to flashpoints and make sure that we have a long-term view about these things. I don't know. Signalling out these two guys, I don't think it's not a particularly good idea. I don't think. It doesn't fit comfortably with me. But I'm not really going to speak out about it on a professional level because it's not part of my business.
Okay,
I think it sends cross messages for youngsters and on a
okay,
personal level.
let's move on a little bit. Rosemary, you've been keeping a bit of an eye on Lee. Just recently, he seems to be a little bit less enthusiastic. He's not always doing his homework. He's turning up late sometimes. Sometimes he's not even turning up at all, which isn't like him. Are you going to have a word with him?
Oh, of course.
Okay, well, I am Lee, and yes, you're one member of staff that I really trust. And there is something troubling me. And the fact is that, as you know, I live on that estate, and that gang's had an eye out for me ever since that incident in the corridor. And basically, they've intimidated me to the point that I'm now having to do things for them. I just don't feel safe otherwise. The good thing, though, it's not all bad, because actually it means protection for my little brother and for my mum and all the rest of it. But, you know, please don't tell anybody about that, will you?
Really difficult one. Very difficult one. And we've all been there as teachers. Where children confide in you and they confide in you, placing that requirement on you to keep it confidential. And we can't give those kind of guarantees.
Mel, so do you have any concerns? What would you be doing?
Well, it comes by way of a referral by saying that Lee's not actually meeting the threshold currently. How many referrals do we get a day? Hundreds and thousands. This, you know, there is 100 Lees that we're seeing on a regular basis. So,
And there aren't many of you.
very few, very, very few. So I'd actually be saying, back to Rosemary, perhaps you need to be speaking to a community police. Maybe the community police need to be aware of how Lee is feeling on the estate, because that is an environmental issue rather than currently an issue that I need to be picking up or passing on to any of my team members to be looking at, because we just have not got the resources.
Okay, well, before we can get very far with that, and at the moment, Rosemary, one's getting the sense that Lee is a victim. But then you see something which perhaps throws things in a slightly different light. You're looking out from the office window one day and you see Lee, and he appears to be menacing another Year 7 pupil and taking some money off him, and he's about to go off. You've got to decide immediately. Are you going to go out there and confront him and say what you're doing?
Well, I would go out straight
You
away
would?
because that would be the procedure. You would want to tackle it. But the thing is that I've already had the conversation with Lee, and I have some understanding about where this is coming from.
So, Richard, what are you going to do? You've called in Lee. You want to talk to me about it. And I'm going to say to you, OK, yes, I admit I have been involved in an extortion racket, but I had no choice. You know, the gang said I had to do it, otherwise they'd beat me up, they'd beat up my little brother. But please, whatever you do, don't go after the gang, because they'll know that I, snitched on them. Will you do that for me? You won't go and tell the gang, or you won't follow it up?
No, but I will tell your parents. We will discuss it with your parents, and let's see what we can do to tackle this problem. Because
You're
it's
not
not
going to
something you
exclude
can
me.
do. It's not something you can deal with on its own. It depends what the nature of the extortion is, Mike, how serious it's been. Lee is a victim one minute, he is a culprit another. You can't turn a blind eye to him extorting money, robbery, whatever he's doing within the school. We're trying to make the school a safer place, and there are going to be a lot of children who are not feeling safe. Lee probably will get excluded.
Mel, this is a bit of a difficult one, isn't it? Because it's really difficult to protect Lee. Whatever we say, it's really difficult to protect him. Is this the point where actually you think about finding another school for him? Rehousing? No, why not?
Not at the moment, because I don't see there's been an issue with the school. The school are being extremely supportive to Lee. If the school thought appropriate, then maybe have a kind of a professionals meeting to look at some of the issues. And be asking Mum what she feels as well and what she wants. And it could well be that we're actually asking Housing Along to come along to that meeting and saying, is there a possibility of an exchange out of the area? That is just, not saying it's going to be the total solution, but it is a possibility to look at.
Okay.
And in due course, whether that would mean Lee changing schools or staying at the same school, again, that's another area which needs to be discussed with Lee's support and Mum.
Okay, Philip, so there's a possibility that maybe Lee and his family will be rehoused. But actually, isn't that worrying you a little bit, that the person who's been put out, in a sense, is the victim of the gang, not the gang members who may be members of your school?
It is worrying me, and it's a completely flawed strategy unless it's rehousing and a new school, because actually this problem is coming from the estate, not from the school. All actions have consequences. So we might deal with this first extortion by the money going back to the victims, talking to the family, some restorative justice between the two boys. Lee doesn't have to say to any of them why he was doing it, but we have to say to him and his mother that if he continues to do it, we might well have to involve the police next time because it's a criminal offence.
Okay, I want to bring in Colin. Are you happy that school hasn't really brought you in on this yet?
No, I'm not actually. Just because you bring the police in doesn't mean to say that we're going to jump in with our size 12s on and go and spoil everything that you're trying to do, because we're working in partnership with you, and we want the best for Lee, we want the best for the school, we want the best for the community. Just involving the police doesn't automatically mean prosecution, and I think that's a very important point we need to get across. It may well be that we go down the road that Phil's suggesting, that we try and mend the hurt that's been done in some way and put a lid on it. I would feel that the school was missing a trick if they didn't tell us, because we probably hold an awful lot of information that the school doesn't have privy to about Lee's associations out there on the street, about the relationships that are taking place.
Okay, Graham, where do you stand on this?
A number of options that I think are available. One is some of the intensive work with a small group on teaching youngsters to resist pressure, protective behaviours, learning, and all of that sort of work can be done with some young people. Second is the restorative justice work between two youngsters can actually teach a language of dealing with tension and pressure in a way that other strategies can't. I think thirdly, some of the individual support work that staff in a school or police service colleagues or youth offending team colleagues can do is available as well. So I think we're in a position where we've got some clear outcomes we want. We want the boy to feel safe. We don't want theft to be going on. We want him to understand what he's done and that there are consequences of what he's done. But now it's finding ways for him to learn by these strategies.
Okay. Things have moved along. It sounds like a lot of these things have worked, at least for Lee. Rosemary, that's good. But you've also noticed that the dinner money protection racket has restarted. Now, are you going to ask Lee if he had anything to do with it?
It would be foolish of me not to, given his track record.
So you are going to talk. I'm Lee. You're going to talk to me.
I am
you
going to
think you
talk
have
to
to.
you.
I can't believe that you've brought me in. You know, I thought you trusted me. Look, I'm getting on with it. I'm doing exactly what you said. It's nothing to do with me.
And this is where you have to draw on the credit that you've got in the bank with these youngsters. That's why I say so much of this is about building proper relationships with youngsters.
Okay,
so
well,
that
you've built a good relationship with me, Lee.
Well,
so,
then,
and just to prove that it's not me, as long as it's just between us, I'll tell you who it is. It's that green bandana gang. I mean, basically, the red bandana gang has lost its top slot in the school. The green gang is in charge. It's good for me because I haven't got to do it anymore. I'm not involved, but they've taken over. But whatever you do, don't whisper that to anybody, will you?
Well, you know, as we said before, I can't give him that undertaking, you know.
But I'll be dead. I'll be dead if they find out that I've shopped them.
I don't have to say that Lee shopped them, but I do have to acknowledge that I've got that kind of information that needs to be passed on to the head, and we need to pass it on to the police.
Okay, it's been passed on to you, Philip.
What you'd do is you would watch the members of the Green Bandana Gang. Right. You'd share all this information without bringing Lee into it. And indeed, you might bring the policeman into the meeting with Lee's family at the first stage. Second stage, fantastic. He's now helping you. Yeah. But you don't drop him in it because you don't need to. You've got some intelligence which you then have to use. You have to find independent evidence of who are now the perpetrators and deal with them. And you deal with them, unless they were doing this much more seriously and maliciously, in much the same way as you dealt with Lee.
We're going to deal with the Green Bandana Gang, Colin?
All Lee's doing is tipping us off that something, if we didn't already know it was happening, he's just tipping us off, or he's reaffirming something's happening. Whatever strategy we have doesn't necessarily have to involve Lee one iota. He's just giving us a piece of information. He's not a witness to anything per se.
So you're going to go after the Green Gang?
We're going to work with the school. We will draw up a plan, an agreed plan of how we're going to go and deal with that, and whatever resources we need to get a grip of that, we will do.
Okay, well, you do. You go after the Green Gang, you get evidence, you see what's going on. Some of them get excluded. The police are taking charges against some of the others. Now, however careful you've been, and it's not come from you, but the Green Gang reckon that actually this information's come from Lee, and so they're out to get him. Rosemary, one day you are on playground duty, and a boy with a green bandana climbs over the school fence. He's marching towards Lee, who's in the playground. He drags out of his tracksuit trousers a great big iron bar. You're about halfway between the two. You've got no mobile phone or walkie-talkie with you. You've got a choice. Are you going to step in and try and protect Lee? Are you going to yell to him so he's got time to pick up a weapon to defend himself? Or are you going to go to the office and call the police?
I'm not having an easy time here, am I?
No. But the clock is ticking.
And I've been there.
So what are you going to do this time?
I have a duty to protect the child.
So you're going to try and get in there to protect.
I haven't got a mobile phone. There aren't any other members of staff around. I would.
It's a tough call.
It's a tough call.
Well, I'm impressed with your bravery and your commitment, but I'm afraid it doesn't come off because while this has been going on, lots of other lads in the playground have been on their mobile phone, they've seen the trouble coming, they've been calling in their bigger brothers, and actually, by the time you get there, really, it's pretty much sort of a huge fight, gang warfare. Police are called inevitably. What's your view? Are all of those going to be charged in some way?
You've got a pretty serious incident there. You've got certainly an affray. It's a public order offence at that point, in the sense that although schools are private property, at the centre you will have some more potentially involved than the periphery. But nevertheless, anybody who takes some action to add to a situation that deteriorates, that involves crime, that involves violence, they're going to be involved in the melee of that, and to one degree or another, they're either going to be charged or they're going to be cautioned.
Graham, what's your view? Let's take us right back to the beginning. Was there a point at which we could have stopped all this from happening? Could it have been avoided at some earlier stage?
My feel from the story you've told for us, Mike, is that this would have happened over an incident unrelated to the boy, and our prime focus is still on the boy himself. That's our concern. I can't see a process earlier on that could have prevented us getting to this crisis without disadvantaging the boy himself right from the word go.
Philip?
I don't think this incident's about Lee. This incident is about that gang culture yet again invading the school. The fact the school took really firm action with the police to resist it actually is a positive we can draw from the negative.
Well, I'm glad to say we can move forward a little bit. Thanks to your hard work, actually, the school does get back on a bit more of an even keel. Thank you all very much indeed.